Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed. Thank you for joining me. Today we are doing philosophical midwifery. We are reading the Philosophical Midwifery book, The New Paradigm for Understanding Human Problems. And if you are joining me today, you have come at a perfect time because we are in chapter 4, which outlines the 12 stages in philosophical midwifery. Just to recap, philosophical midwifery is a term coined by the great Socrates, and it's named after his mother, who was a midwife of babies. And Socrates said, "My art, one of the questions we have is, what exactly is an art? My art is like my mother's, only much, much better." Because while she is able to help people through the difficulties, the pains, the tribulations of giving birth to a baby, and can judge whether or not it's a healthy baby, I do the same thing, only with ideas. I help people to give birth to the ideas that are carrying, that are causing their problems. Isn't that interesting? Now, what kind of problems are we talking about? We're not talking about everyday one-off kinds of problems like stubbing your toe or betting on the wrong sports team. We're talking about a kind of problem that repeats itself, a kind of problem that we can't get out of, a kind of problem that blinds us from relating to evidence and reason, a kind of problem that causes our repeating cycles of failure and suffering over and over in our lives. A kind of problem that causes us to act unjustly to ourselves and to anyone else, especially if we are pursuing our highest, most meaningful goals. We are living in a world that people get to play out these kinds of problems called a pathologos globally. And that's the world we're in. So we have this.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems because we have failed to do what we are here to do, which is specifically philosophical midwifery. To learn what we need to do to uncover, understand, and accurately address this kind of problem so that we can become free of it. If we don't, we are enslaved by it. Now, why do we say enslaved? Well, that's because we don't have the pathologos, it has us. It is the most powerful force in the universe, and it is the most powerful force in our lives. So we can say we are sleepwalkers. In the book, sleepwalking is how human beings are described. I liked to use the word zombie. We are zombies because we have this zombie virus, because it functions as a psychic parasite to sap our energy, to distract us from our most meaningful goals, and it causes us to repeat certain patterns that we are blind to, but dictate the entirety of our lives, and we call that fate. We are stuck in fate. Understand somebody's pathologos, you can predict their entire lives, and they won't change. That's the importance of philosophical midwifery, and that's the significance of this kind of belief called a pathologos belief. Now, in chapter 3, we looked at the different classes of beliefs, and if you missed that, you can check out the previous episodes. I post them all on YouTube. Hooray for me. And a big round of applause for me.
Don't be disgusting.
Sorry. And basically, there are 6 classes of beliefs that can be hierarchically arranged with pathologos at the bottom, because a pathologos is an unsuspected false belief about self and reality that binds us to our problems and blinds us from being able to relate to any evidence or reason to show that our conclusions are false. We think something is true about ourselves and what we predict of the future. I can't do this thing or that thing because I know what's going to happen. And we're wrong. Not only are we wrong, any evidence or reason that suggests that we are wrong, we are blind to. So maybe you've got a friend in your life who you're trying to reason with out of a problem, but there's a certain kind of problem that you try and address that you have to keep talking about to him. You have to keep making the case, hey, listen, buddy, we don't think this, or you're not so bad in this way, but it just doesn't stick. Not only does it not stick, they might get defensive and aggressive because you're asking them to relate to a universe that they can't. They can't relate to it. They can't see it. That is very confusing to people. In other words, we've got a sound drop for this.
The problem is that you can't reason
someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves.
I've got to stop playing with my effects.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
My soundboard sometimes slows down some voices, but the point is you can't reason somebody out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into. So how do you get yourself out of a problem? That is philosophical midwifery. Therefore, as every single human being, that means you, that means your best friend, that means your partner, that means the guy that lives next door to you, and that means the guy that lives up the street. Every single human being gets a pathologos. So we can come to some conclusions about what we are here to do as human beings. If we all get a pathologos problem, and it is the most significant problem in our lives, it's the cause of our distracting tangents and fantasies that distract us from our most meaningful goals. Our dreams, almost always, 80% of our dreams are about our pathologos problems. And it's the cause of the mass suffering and injustice we see in our world and within our own souls. Then we can conclude the most important thing we're here to do, or our purpose, or the meaning of life, or the holy grail, if you want to talk about how it plays out in stories, in mythology. There's a word for it. I thought it was turducken, but it's not a turducken. That's a mixture of a turkey and a duck and a chicken. MacGuffin. If you're familiar with screenwriting, it's called the MacGuffin. This is what it is. Now, I can say that, but that won't mean anything to you because that's just some guy on the internet's opinion. It's not even my opinion. It's the author of the book's opinion. It's not even his opinion. It's Socrates' opinion. And it's not even his opinion because this is the only form of psychotherapy that has been empirically proven. It's the only thing that's scientifically legit to solve problems. And of course it is, if you understand it. But that's not going to stick either. Because and that's why we have this channel, and that's why we're reading the book. Because we have to understand how we can go from right opinions to our own seeing and understanding. We need to make it ours. We can't just believe. The whole point is to move ourselves out of belief into our own understanding. And even that's not the end. You have to verify your own understanding in your own direct experience. You have to go out and try to reach your most meaningful goals after going through philosophical midwifery and see if your understanding and conclusions work. Have you been freed? Are you able to do the things you have previously been blocked from doing? And as you succeed in that, you should, if you're playing the game, be reflecting on the process itself. If you are going through this process and it's the most meaningful, profound, and significant thing in your life, if it's the thing that allows you to free yourself from a false image of yourself, and you can use that freedom to discover the truth about self and reality, what does that mean about the art itself? Could becoming a philosophical midwife yourself be a meaningful goal, if not the most meaningful goal? That's a question that you have to address. Because if you are setting your sights lower than excellence, if you are setting yourself up for a goal that's not your highest goal, that is evidence of a block. So, what are the different kinds of beliefs just before we go into chapter 4, just to remind ourselves of chapter 3? Well, axioms are at the top. Those are a class of beliefs that are self-evidently true that you can't prove with evidence and reason. What the heck kind of belief is that? Let's put it on the board. Okay, this is the blackboard. And I apologize if this is old hat for you, but it's worth reminding ourselves of. Axiom, oops, and I have that thing where my board doesn't work. I hate that. Let's see if I can plug it back in again. And if it fixed the thing. And my blackboard is still doing that thing it does where it only does dots. Uh-oh, we might be in trouble here. Let's see if I can fix it real quick. There's this one here. If I open this, let's see if that works. Yes, we fixed it. Hooray! Axiom. An axiom is something like if A is equal to B and C is equal to B, then therefore A is equal to C. If this stick is as big as this stick, and actually two different sorts of stick. If this stick is the same length as this stick, and this stick is the same length as this stick, then this stick will be the same length as this stick. There you go. Of course. Can you prove that? No. But you have to accept that as a basic principle to do math, to do science. Speaking of science, a scientific belief is the next one down. Scientific. That's, this is self-evident. Scientific is proven by evidence and reason. Hooray. Hooray. Simple beliefs. Next one down. They're ones like, oh, I need petrol in my car to go places. I'm no mechanic. I don't really know why it is, but it's enough of a belief to go on to use. Enough. Sufficient. Sufficient. 8. What does that mean? 8. Say more about 8. Gaining vision. Next one down is a supernatural. We might know this as a religious belief, but it doesn't have to be just religious. Supernatural. That is cannot. You cannot be shown, be proven by evidence and reason. Can you prove that Mary was a virgin? Nope. Can't prove it. You gotta believe it anyway. So that's also an absurd. So technically that's an absurd belief. So religious or supernatural beliefs that can't be proven by evidence and reason are absurd beliefs. That's why a lot of religious people can be manipulated to act against their own interests. That's why Trump and the fascists and the Nazis and the Republicans all go for religious people, even though they're making their lives worse off. Preachers scam the money. Lots of sexual scandals. Motivated genocide right now. The Jews are genociding the Palestinians. That's based on people who are trained to think in terms of supernatural beliefs. Cannot be proven with evidence and reason. Oh, I kind of use this in my argument for moral philosophy and the justification for what's the highest good. An axiom is that I basically say it is true in X case, Y case, in all cases, then it must be true. Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's interesting. We're going to get into in this channel, hopefully soon, Euclid's elements of geometry, where he builds an entire system of two-dimensional geometry. But to play, you have to accept certain things as self-evidently true that you can't prove. You can't prove that one that I just gave, but we intuitively accept it. You have to accept it. Things that are equal to the same thing are equal to each other. Yes, it needs to be true. That's even better than scientific beliefs. It's right at the top. And number one, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now 5 is prejudice, which is disproven by evidence and reason. We're all very familiar with people who have prejudices that are disproven by evidence and reason. But, of course, people can overcome their prejudices with under certain circumstances, with new experiences, or say you might leave your small town, go to college, and you realize, oh, all black people aren't XYZ like my dad said they were, that kind of thing. And then right at the bottom, the worst class of belief, but also the most powerful for human beings, is a pathologos, which is we take to be axioms, but they are not. We take to be self-evident truths. They are disproven by evidence and reason as well, but any evidence and reason that can show that our general conclusions about ourself and reality, and also the divine or God, any evidence or reason that shows our pathologos beliefs to be false, we cannot relate to, and yet we take them to be self-evident truths. This is the most powerful force in the universe, and for a human being to address this and the root cause of your particular pathologos is the most difficult thing you will do. It is the most important and meaningful thing you will do. And so I am trying to do my best to highlight that, to encourage people to take up this quest and to stay in the game. What we are seeing in our species is the playing out of a kind of story of what follows if we do not recognize and address the pathologos. We are still fucking fighting Nazis. We still have capitalism, even though it's absurd and killing us all. We are not realizing the true nature of ourselves in our own personal lives. Our relationships are shit. Or at least not as fulfilling as they can be. Because in our relationships, if this is our model of self and reality and God and beauty and justice, this is the model that you are going to try and force on your partner and vice versa. And it's the cause of conflicts in relationships. So we say love without understanding. This kind of understanding is very, very dangerous. So we need to address the pathologos. Now, what's fascinating is the method of addressing the pathologos is the model or map or paradigm of understanding itself. And the model of understanding is the dialectic. Hooray. The dialectic is the map or structure Now, this is not a complete definition. You have to keep building up your understanding of the dialectic. And by the way, we're reading on this channel Socrates, the Balboa version of Socrates, the only one that has the actual words properly translated, because translators also have had a pathologos that influences their translations up until the most recent translation by one Balboa, who is someone who has gone through philosophical midwifery himself and has been trained by a master of the dialectic. So he has learnt ancient Greek and has worked with a group who are also learning ancient Greek and doing philosophical midwifery on a regular basis. So we actually have the words of Socrates. And he is someone who has mastered the dialectic, which is the map and structure of the logos. Hooray.
I'm too pure.
The logos. So you might recognize the logos here. The pathologos, which means the sick or false reasoning or belief. Whereas the map or structure of logos is what we use to climb out of the pathologos in philosophical midwifery to free ourselves from our chains of suffering and ignorance. And we use that freedom to get our nose in the Meno, which we're reading at the moment, or any of the Platonic dialogues, because we can use that freedom to follow the logos through our... Let's do another one. Through the levels of cognitive development, we have ignorance, where we think we know something we don't. Ignorance. And that's the pathologos, fundamentally. That's the worst. Why would you seek to learn something like, why would you seek to learn the true nature of the self if you already think you know what it is? That's a difficulty we face. Everyone thinks they know what they are. Everyone thinks they know the self. You're wrong. And I am sorry that I let you know about that in such a harsh way. But if you are the sort of person who is attracted to this channel, then you're probably not going to be too worried about hearing about that because you're interested in learning. And there's the philosophical ignorance. Philosophical ignorance, which is you realize philosophical ignorance. You realize you don't know the nature of self and reality, but you're eager to find out. You're going to go through what you need to go through to purify yourself from what's false and perfect yourself in your own thinking, your own way of being. And as you upgrade your use of cognitive faculties, we have different capabilities that we have. It opens you up to perceiving different levels of reality. So not only is it an educational thing, it's a spiritual thing, because the higher cognitive functions allow you to perceive non-physical levels of reality. That's the point. The physical world we can have opinions about, which is the next stage. We can have opinions. So we want to go from philosophical ignorance to right opinions. That's why we read this book. That's why we read Socrates. And that's why we also do dream analysis, because dreams are your guide to help in both processes. What processes? Midwifery and philosophy. Both use the dialectic, by the way. Both follow the logos. Midwifery uses the dialectic to discover what's false and free ourselves from what's false, while the dialectic in philosophy is to use that freedom to seek what's true, the true nature of self and reality. What is your mind? What is the scope of the mind? How far can you go? How can you understand and experience the most profound levels of mind? And what's beyond even that? So right opinions. And of course, we don't want to stay there. These are a good enough guide, according to Socrates and the Meno. But the problem with right opinions is you have to keep reviewing. You have to keep watching this channel every day and talking with your friends about it over coffee. And when I say coffee, we have some coffee.
Freaks. Is this chat full of dumb cunts?
No. Got the best chatters of the whole internet here. So that movement from right opinions to our own understanding, we have to see how and why these opinions are true. And a simple example is you want to become a mechanic. You got to start somewhere. Well, you become an apprentice under a master mechanic. He tells you a bunch of stuff about where the gasket goes next to the carburetor and all that car stuff. But you need to understand how and why the gasket goes next to the carburetor. Understanding. Now, specifically in philosophy, we're understanding the nature of being. So, already we have two categories. We have this category, which is the cognitive functions. The senses that we have in our mind, like we have eyes that see, we have ears that hear sound, eyes that see color. We also have different capacities of our mind that we can awaken. Because it needs to be triggered. Yes. This is the stuff that we call being triggered. Right, as we progress through these cognitive stages, we will get triggered. We'll hit a block. Because this is the progression of the logos through the dialectic. Now, for a block to function as a block, it has to block you from this. If it didn't, well, then it wouldn't be much of a block. And we wouldn't say it's the most powerful force in the universe. And this channel is all about helping people have fun on this quest. It is the funnest game. We call it the noblest game, but I call it the only real game in town. You're a wizard, Harry. So in chapter 1, we looked at the conversation that the author of this book had with Joseph Campbell, who wrote the hero's journey, Hero of 1,000 Faces. If you do screenwriting or script writing, you read this book. He studied the different myths around the world and realized that there is a kind of archetype called the hero's journey. But he gained that from viewing the physical world. So we have to look at this is the cognitive functions. And for people who want to be fancy, we can call that epistemology, or how we think. Epistemology. Now, I don't like to use fancy words like that, but mainly because I can't spell it. Epistemology. But it's handy to be aware of, because some people who claim to be philosophers who aren't doing this, so they're not philosophers, they're lovers of ignorance or personal opinions, they'll use big words, so like epistemology, to scare you away from the actual quest we're all here to do. So it's good to know about it. Just means how you think. And next to that we have ontology, which is ontos, which is the word for being. Ontology is, we can say, dimensions of reality. We can say dimensions, or different dimensions of the world. Dimensions. Or ontology, if you're fancy. Now, why we bring up that? Because certain, just like we can see color and hear sounds, certain cognitive functions have their own domain. For instance, you can have opinions about the world of becoming, which is the physical world. We say it's becoming because everything is coming into being or decaying. So we have the physical world, or becoming, down here. And as we progress from the love of learning into studying the realm of being, physical world, or become. That's not how you spell becoming. Put a C in there. Becoming. We have the metaphysical world, or the world of being. Now, understanding we can use to address the physical world of becoming. That's pretty much philosophical midwifery. We talked about all of those different classes of beliefs, but here's the thing. You can understand all of them. So understanding, you can apply or has a scope over understanding over beliefs. That's why we are reading this book. We're developing an understanding of all of the classes of belief so we can help people move through them. Specifically to help people free themselves from the most insidious, powerful, be brave, stay in it, don't give up, please, kind of belief, the pathologos. It's part of having an art, having an understanding of what falls under the scope of your art. So what? So, while you can have beliefs and opinions about the physical world from your sense perceptions of the physical world, understanding can be applied to being as well. And the application of understanding to the realm of being, we call nous, or knowledge with a capital K, N-O-L, knowledge. Now, we don't mean knowledge of, I know how to ride my bike, or I know how many beans there are in China. We need the word nous, which is a Greek word because we don't have an English word for it, because English is from Latin. The Romans killed the philosophers and banned this because they were fuckheads and they wanted to enslave people. So they said, hey, you know how you can develop through understanding? Don't do that. Just have faith. And so Emperor Justinian banned philosophy, banned understanding, and said, just have faith, which means just be down here. Keep your pathologos, keep your prejudices, have absurd beliefs. And that was the beginning of the Dark Ages, 529 AD. And that's our educational system currently. That's why we have to have this channel, because no one's learning this, because our understanding of philosophy isn't this. It's what Socrates calls the love of opinions, philodoxia, which is the love of our opinions from the physical world. So you have stupid shit on YouTube like debates. Jordan Peterson versus 20 idiots. No, that's a bit harsh. He's the idiot. I shouldn't be so flippant. But the point is, nobody's changing their mind, or
No one seems learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
Nobody's actually learning or growing or addressing actual problems. We're still in a barbaric state. And that was chapter 1. When the author was fighting the Nazis in World War II, he realized, I'm walking down the exact same road that the Romans walked down hundreds of years ago, fighting the barbarians that they were fighting. I'm doing the same thing too, fighting the Nazis. And of course, the Nazis weren't defeated. They surrendered when their leader, who they were loyal to, told them they could give up. Meaning we didn't address the causes of Nazism. We didn't push forward. And that's been Pierre's experience in the military. Many times when they invaded certain places in Italy, or they won certain major battles against Hitler and the Nazis, the people in charge decided to have a party. instead of pushing further. So when the Nazis gave up, we didn't push further. Which is why we're still fighting Nazis like Trump and Elon Musk and Nazis in a different uniform like Benny Yahoo and all of these capitalist oligarchs and so on. We haven't addressed the cause of the Nazi problem. We still have fascism under capitalism. So let's keep going. So that's how philosophy is taught today, and that's why we are taught debate, and not the opposite of debate, the dialectic, which is friendly, which is cooperative. Well, cooperative in the sense of you working together mutually, because understanding is for everyone. Everyone can understand how to ride a bike. You don't have to be a Jew. You don't have to be a Protestant. You don't have to be a Mormon, because it's understanding. Everyone can understand how to fly a plane, etc., etc. You can bring humanity together into a unity. You can bring your soul together into a unity, irregardless of whether or not the rest of the world comes on board, irregardless of whether or not we save humanity from our ignorance and prevent our extinction and the destruction of the planet, which is only a few moments away. Doesn't matter, we can still do our work, the work that we were born, that we are here to do. Well, what is that work? Well, understanding is something that happens through time. It can be applied to what's below it. Let's use a different color. Let's use this green. It can be applied, you can understand opinions and ignorance. You can also understand being. That's philosophy. And the understanding applied to being can facilitate the direct experience. Every time we have understanding, you've got to confirm your understanding in experience. There's no use hearing that there is an eternal level of reality that is immortal, that is your own self, your own mind. No use just hearing it. You want to go to the party yourself and have a good time.
I've been a bad little girl.
So the direct experience of the level of being is called nous. But of course, beyond that, you have to ask the question, well, what's having the experience, or what's beyond knowledge? There's a question mark. This is the big question that Socrates always lays out in his dialogues that we see over and over. What's the cause of nous? Or what's the cause of being? That's the question. The level of reality beyond being is the self. Which is interesting, because if the self is beyond the divine, then you can see the absurdity of religion. Because no one has to tell you you have to believe you have a self. That's crazy. No one has to convince you you are a self or you have a self. So we can let go of beliefs. The self. Or what Parmenides calls in the book the one self. That's what we're after. Which is interesting, because the one self is the ultimate goal, knowing the self and showing the self, which means hopefully you've got an understanding and some knowledge in your back pocket, so you don't just recognize the self, but you can maybe do something with it. For Socrates, go into the marketplace and dialogue with, in the symposium, he was said to talk to not just the sophists, the people who claim to be experts, the Petersons and the Trumps and the Joe Rogans of the world, no, who think they're experts of shit they don't know about. He also talked to housewives and blacksmiths, regular people who are not interested in that stuff, and brought them to tears in their reflection on what? Well, not the self, but the false image of the self. That's the idea. So if this is the goal, we have to remove We have to get off our throne. There's a pretender on our throne, the false idea of the self that prevents this movement. Hey, why go through all this work of reading and dream analysis and midwifery to know the self? I know what the self, my daddy told me what it is, and he's the best. That's the pathologos. I make fun of it by saying my mummy or my daddy, but really to address our parents or our parental surrogates who pretended to be knowers, who were sophists themselves, at a certain key scene when we were too young to question and we were dependent on them. That's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Why? Because we want to defend our images, our ignorance of beauty, of our loved ones. To see how our parents, every parent actually functioned when we were doing this, when we were pursuing our most meaningful goals, our self goals. Our parents or our parental surrogates came in at a certain key scene and said, no fucking way, not in this house. Don't you know what happens if you're open and free and honest and pursuing your own goals? Ooh, I don't want that happening to you because I love you. So I'm going to teach you to be a good follower, to be a good Catholic, to be a good Muslim, to be a follower, to be a slave. I'm going to teach you not to pursue the self. Not in words, because it wasn't actually a teaching scene. So what we do in philosophy involves certain things like asking questions and having understanding and testing your understanding and experience, and it being a public teaching. And your discoveries you can pass on to someone else, like Socrates. Or like in Buddhism, the 10th ox herding picture, where the person, which is the last stage in their series of stages of enlightenment, where the person who's fully enlightened goes into the world and helps others. So there we had parental surrogates who said no way, and so we believed them. We didn't ask questions. We couldn't. We didn't have an understanding of the logos. And so we took the blame for their injustice. So that's part of the pathologos. There's an amnesia. We forget about the scene. We forget we've repeated the same problems over and over. Because we forget even that we have a false definition about ourselves that we are carrying because we never put it into words. That's the amnesia. But also that's the cause of anger. Our soul is not happy with this insult to the self. We are angry at this insult to the self that we suffered, that is causing all our problems our entire fucking life. We are pissed. But unless you're doing philosophical midwifery, you will project that anger onto others and respond to them. So we see with the Jews who are doing the genocide and stuff, and the people supporting the Jews who are Jewish themselves. The Ethan Kleins of the world and the whoever that guy who calls himself Destiny is. You shouldn't use that word. Destiny is very, very important because we're escaping fate in our pathologos to find our true purpose and destiny. These people who are Jewish themselves share a pathologos or a similar enough pathologos with Benny Yahoo, and so they get angry and confused because Benny Yahoo appeals to a shared pathologos. And what's their way of being? Cry-bullying. They do injustice, the same kind of injustice that they suffered. Literally, the Jews suffered a genocide, they're doing a genocide. That plays out politically, it also plays out within our individual souls. So we do unto others the same flavor of injustice that was done unto us. But we don't see it. That's the amnesia, that's the blind spot, that's our anger. And so when people say, hey, you Jews, don't do genocide, you fucks, they get angry and defensive. Well, that's anti-Semitism. Well, we are the victim. Yeah, you're the victim. You're the perpetual victim That's part of your pathologos flavor. The cry-bully, the perpetual victim. Just like the Germans, blind loyalty, duty. So the Germans have their Hitler, the Jews have their Benny Yahoo, the Russians have their Putin, the Yanks, the Americans have their Trump, and so on and so on. Everyone has it. It's not a blame game. It's part of being human. Everyone gets it. It's not about blame and it's not about punishment, because punishment is absurd. If you understand this, you will see the necessity of what follows. Of course the Jews are doing this. Of course the Russians are doing this. Of course the Americans are doing this. If you understand it, which means you can't blame them. They have to take responsibility. This is how they take responsibility, to face what they're doing and go through the stages that we're all here to go through to address it. Now, that's globally. That's the implications globally. And if we don't do it, our species is fucked. We're dead. If we do it, fantastic. We're doing our job. But we can do it as individuals. That's the point. We have to do it ourselves to be a beacon, to be a role model for the rest of the world. Because once they see how much fun we're doing without ever blaming, without ever thinking of punishment or violence under the lie that somehow violence makes you better, without doing that at all ever, encouraging us to reach our most meaningful goals and looking for problems. You want to have a problem. You want to step out of your comfort zone, reach further, reach higher, because you will hit your block. You will. It's being a human. But those blocks that you face give you the material to do philosophical midwifery on, which is your job. Which is why punishment is absurd. The idea of sin. You missed the mark. Sin is actually the word amatya, which is an archery term which means missing the mark. But if you missed the mark in archery, you don't say because you're an evil archer. No, you have to adjust your aim. This is philosophical midwifery. This is the importance of it. So you can say that the two things we're here to do, most importantly, is to remove the false idea of the self that causes our projections, that causes our anger, that causes our injustice, and blocks us from our own development. That's midwifery. And then, of course, you have to be doing it alongside philosophy, because one of the prerequisites for addressing a problem is you have to be seeking your most meaningful goal. A problem isn't, I didn't get enough pizza at dinner tonight. That's not a problem. A problem is that which blocks you from this development, from philosophical ignorance to right opinions. So you have to have your nose in the Meno, or nose in a Platonic dialogue. Balboa translation only. And, well, of course, because it's the actual translation. You can't just be content with opinions. You have to be trying to piece together the text, because the texts are puzzles. There are twists and twists in the book. You have to look for puzzles. That's why it's the game. That's why it's like a video game or a detective novel. So we say philosophy is like being a wizard. But also like Sherlock Holmes, because you have to, that's us here. Be seeking truth above all else with excellence. You're a Sherlock Holmes because you're looking for puzzles and solving them in the book, in philosophy, and in your life in midwifery. Looking for questions. That's the game. And when we play it, we're able to reach our most meaningful goals. We're able to have actually good relationships, actually loving relationships built on the love of understanding. And then everyone else will go, oh my God, these guys are having the best time. And they're solving problems. And they're reaching the most meaningful goals. And they kick ass. And they have the best stuffies. Look at this guy. And this one. It's a chicken. Let's join them and do what they're doing. And then everyone will have a lot of fun. So, that's a brief overview, and that brief overview will itself just be right opinions. You're going to have to think about why that makes sense, how that makes sense, why it has to be so. And the way we do that also is we find where I was scribbling on the board. Where was it? This I need to change screens every now and again because I get lost trying to look for where we were. I would assume I'd just move. Oh my goodness. Talk amongst yourselves for a bit. Here we go. Right. So yes. So it's the way of solving problems. It's learning. So this understanding that you apply to right opinions, that's the dialectic. Applying the dialectic or the structure of the logos, the intelligible nature of reality, to those right opinions to put it all together. And of course, that applied to being is philosophy. But then after you have that experience of the brilliant light of pure being or mind turning about and knowing itself, that's called ousia in the Greek. Got to add it in because we don't have the word. Ousia is the capacity we have to know ourselves or turn upon ourselves and know ourselves. Even that experience of pure ousia or the brilliant light of being needs to be understood. That's metaphysics. Whether you've had it yourself or you're just understanding the necessity of it, but hey, have you seen many beautiful things in the physical world? A beautiful person, a beautiful streamer, a beautiful painting? Well then, necessarily, there must be the cause or the fundamental principle outside of space and time for there to be beautiful things or beauty as an adjective. So in philosophy, it's going from the adjectives to the nouns. So we say in being, they are the selfers. The selfers. Because we're not looking at a beautiful person or a beautiful whatever. We're looking at beauty itself. Or in the Greek, self-beauty. Self-justice. And when you experience being, you'll reflect on it and you'll say, oh my goodness, I experienced this thing. And hopefully quickly before it flutters away from your memory, because why do you end up forgetting even your enlightenment or pure being experiences? Because the pathologos is even more powerful than the greatest experience possible. That's why we say it's the greatest force in the universe. Many people have had these experiences. Maybe you know someone who's took a heroic dose of acid at some festival and it's like, I recognize myself as pure being. I no longer have a fear of death. Then you talk to him in a week and he's forgotten it. That's the pathologos. So you talk to them quickly and say, well, tell me about the experience. And they'll say things like, it was pure beauty, self-beauty. Or maybe they experienced the same ousia, but there was a different aspect of it that was more heightened. So I experienced the order of everything of all time, all at once, perfectly ordered in the way it must be. That's self-justice. I experienced the whole of all parts, such that there was nothing outside it. So it was like infinity and oneness infinity? Self-infinity. But there was nothing outside it. Self-limit. But it was the whole of all the parts. Self-whole. Those are the things that we study in Socrates. Which is the aspects of being. We call those the selfers because it's self-beauty, self-justice. In the Greek, it's also called the eidos. That's important to be aware of because E-I-D-O-S, because one of the great betrayals against our spiritual heritage is the translation of the Greek word E-I-D-O-S, as forms. If you go to college, they'll probably say, hey, Plato believed in the theory of forms. Bollocks. The word is eidos. The word eidos means to behold. It's the aspect that is the different aspects that you can behold directly in pure ousia of being. Isn't that interesting? I think it's interesting. What do you think, Arun Brown?
He better not. I find that very entertaining.
It is entertaining. It's not forms. That's stupid. Oh, and I'm not going to fuck around. If it's stupid, I'm going to say it's stupid. I don't care if I hurt people's feelings. We don't have time to fuck around anymore. And, let's not be telling the truth because there's a professor of philosophy who's my best friend and who cares? If he's got it wrong, then change his mind. Read the book. I'm not going to mess around. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But I think the whole idea of pussyfooting around to hurt people's feelings, but I love my religion, but my daddy was a saint. That was for, I think, the boomer generation, because the idea of Eastern spirituality was really new in the 50s and 60s in the West. And but we have the internet now, and we know if we don't confidently assert the truth and demand we use words properly, the Republicans or the right-wingers, and right-wingers, by the way, that's just the Pathologos party. That's why they say everything other than you is bad, and they're just grifting. So those Nazis and fascists will declare the truth when we are being nice and polite and pretending that Trump isn't a KKK dude, or Elon Musk isn't a Nazi, or Peterson isn't a white supremacist. They're going to just step in and take all of our shit and kill everyone. So, if you're here, of course, you will feel maybe triggered by some things because I'll touch your particular religion or your particular family belief or your particular cultural milieu, which is the surrounding aspects of the pathologos. Your personal pathologos has to fit you into the culture. So if you're in like a strict culture where women will get stoned to death if they leave their house or whatever the fuck, then your pathologos will say, hey, women are less. You are inadequate because you're a woman. Because your which is a false idea of the self. It's bullshit, but it has to also fit within the cultural milieu. So if you're triggered, it's not personal. It's no blame. It's normal. It's human. We all are. I throw in my Catholic shit too. And everyone is welcome because it's the human quest, so long as you don't expect to be babied. I'm not going to baby you. You're not children. We can't be children anymore. This honest use of language and self-reflection, or logos and ousia, those are the two big ones, is the movement from immaturity to maturity and rationality. Jed, political question. Bring up the thing you mentioned of Nazis and capitalism. Do you think it's better to hate or to love everyone? As we're saying, love without understanding is dangerous. The Nazis loved Hitler. What's better? Love or hate? Loving Hitler or hating Hitler? As hate is a form of not negative trauma. You can hate Hitler without any trauma. You can hate Nazism. You can hate the pathologos. You can hate genocide. Is that trauma? Or are you being mature? The key word is understanding. If you love Hitler, that's the German problem. That's why the Americans in the war called the Germans dogs. Because they were blindly loving or blindly loyal without understanding. without understanding, without judging. By the way, this is one of the cultural milieus that's going to be very common. It's called everything is relative. There is no good or bad. There is no beauty or ugly. It's all in the eye of the beholder. It's all personal opinions. Now, it's so common that there is a book that we will read on this channel once we have enough people who are on board, who are interested, called Is It All Relative? And you can order it yourself. It fucking kicks ass. It's really, really good. It's called Is It All Relative? By the same author of this book. And it's people, it's a modern Socratic dialogue. So it's like Socrates, except in a coffee shop. It's really, really awesome. And it's worth reading. We will read it here. Because this idea that there is no truth blocks you from seeking the truth. Oh, there's no right or wrong. Trump is just as good as, I don't know, as Socrates, let's say. Who's to say what's right and wrong? It's all a matter of opinions. That's called Is It All Relative? Or relative. Everything is relative to perspective and opinion. And Socrates had to address that as well. And you can play that out too. In fact, the way you play it out is the dialectic. So, the question, is it okay to hate things? Well, depends. Do you hate things different from you because it's different from your pathologos? Do you love things that are bad because you love Putin because Putin's way of being is similar enough to your Russian pathologos or your Russian family way of being? The key word is understanding. Understanding what's worth loving. Understanding how to love. Love built on understanding. Understanding your right opinions is the spiritual method to move to experiencing the right opinions about being. Understanding it is the application of the dialectic to your right opinions to organize it rationally, systematically. There are only 4 categories. You don't have to memorize much. Definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. Understanding your ignorance to solve human problems is what we're doing here. Understanding even that experience of being allows you to go beyond it. It all comes down to understanding. Understanding, the logos and dialectic, fits everywhere. And yesterday, we had a really kick-ass stream. We had some good questions like we're getting today. And we realized, hey, this progression from the physical world of becoming, where we have our opinions. Once you realize, hang on a second, there are many things. There are many beautiful things. There are many just things. There are many sticks that we say are equal to another stick, even though we never see equality itself. We never see beauty itself. We never see justice itself in the physical world. As soon as you realize that, and that's part of reading Plato, part of reading Socrates, he encourages this kind of reflection. The movement from many to wonder about the one, or the cause, the reflection on causes, is from the many to the one. That's what Socrates calls philomathesis. Philo means love, and mathesis means learning. And you remember it because you imagine someone doing a thesis on their math homework. That's learning. Philomathesis, being curious and wondering about the one behind the many. Beauty itself. And realizing there must necessarily be these causes and principles behind our physical world, keeping our physical world together. That's philomathesis. That's the first stage of learning. That can take you out of the physical world because now you're reflecting on the causes of the physical world. That's that first transition from the world of becoming to the world of being. Now, the study of the world of being, or the spiritual world, if that's the physical world, This is the world that you can experience out of body. So the Phaedo that we've read together includes a yoga, a method for how to separate your soul or your mind out of your physical senses so you can experience the non-physical world. That's philosophy. Philos, love. Sophia, the love of wisdom. The experience of being along with its understanding, philosophia. And of course, the things that you study to gain an understanding are the eidos, not the forms. So send an email to your ex-philosophy teacher and say, hey, by the way. And of course, Socrates says that's just a lead into the real thing that we want, philophronesis, which is, hey, if these are all self-ers, self-beauty, self-justice, what's in common? Again, it's many to the one. We've got many instances of self. What's the one cause? What's the self? Do you have to believe you have a self? Of course not. It's the most immediate, it's the most personal, it's the most... What's the word? Intimate? No. It's the most direct thing. Beyond even experience, because many spiritual traditions like Taoism, that has this symbol, think that the experience of this is enlightenment because it's the greatest experience you can ever have, by definition. And they're right. But then there are other traditions that talk about a state beyond it, like philosophy. And the reason why we say philosophy is the archetype or the single or the one system of spirituality from which the many you can place between it is because there's something unique about philosophy that the others don't have. So even if you say, well, I recognize the Taoist experience of pure being, they think that's enlightenment, but then there are the Buddhists. What was a symbol for Buddhism? Maybe that fat Buddha meditating, happy smile. Buddhism talk about a stage, thinks even this is illusion. They talk about a state of nirvana or emptiness. How well do they talk about it? Do they recognize if a Buddhist and a Taoist crossed each other on a path, would they recognize each other? Could they have a conversation? So what are we saying? We're saying that for every level of development or every stage from here up this ladder can be understood. And of course it can be, because there are people down here who are nihilists, that think there's nothing real. And then there are materialists who are a step above. Well, okay, there is something real. I'm not a lonely nihilist, but it's just a physical world. I'm a materialist, and so on and so on. Taoists and Buddhists and Kashmir Sufists and so on and so on. So what? You're gonna pick a team? You're gonna do that my team versus your team bullshit again? Or are we going to understand everything? Understand it in a way that we can even help. Because last time we looked at the idea that for every stage that we will go through, you will go through all of them. That's part of our job here. By going through all of them, you'll see what it takes to go through them all. You'll feel what it's like. You'll see what the sacrifices you'll have to make are. You'll find out how difficult it is to address your pathologos. You'll go through all of them. From nihilism right at the bottom to like the level where you have recognized there is something beyond the physical world and you have a strict dualism. Well, there is a divine or a God, but we would just be ants to it. We can never know it. Strict dualism. And people who think, okay, there is a divine, but the best we can do is form a group. The people who've had experiences of the divine, but only instance. the gap between each moment. In other words, every single level that you will go through as a human being has a system of understanding and an accompanying state of mind. You'll feel something, you'll experience something. And hey, yeah, those materialists, they'll have a logic. Of course there's just the physical world. Everything can be reduced to physical components. Even those meditation experiences or enlightenment experiences, we can reduce them down to squirtings of dopamine and this or that chemical and a bit of DMT here and a bit of this there, a bit of serotonin. There is a logic within each system that can be understood, but will be lacking. In other words, we are not blaming someone for being whatever level they're on, but we want to show that it can be understood. Not just understood, but understood as a part within a greater whole. And why is that important? Because there are certain levels, like for example, nihilism, that requires another person to get out of. So, whatever level, because the dialectic isn't just the system of understanding anything, like music. If you want to understand music, where it comes from, it's the dialectic too. We're going to get into that later. Any system, any rational ordered system within reality that can be hierarchically structured, hierarchical structuring of parts follows the logos and dialectic, which is something you can understand and verify for yourself. But the dialectic isn't just that, it's also the system of communication. While debate is misusing language to abuse someone, so both people walk away with the same bullshit beliefs they walk in with, no one learns anything.
No one seems learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
No one's learning or growing and addressing actual problems. That's debate. That's debate bro bullshit. That's senators talking bullshit and not solving problems while the fascists steal all our money. It's not their money. Money is like a river that we all need. We all need to drink from that river to eat and have housing. There are some assholes who've set up a dam. That's happening while the senators debate. The opposite of that is the dialectic, which is a way of communication that is the friendly, gentle, rational, mature art, and we need people. So even this level of reflection that you're at here, you could take this with you, and you might come across a nihilist who has a certain level of understanding. There is no reality. Even the physical world is just the matrix. It's just an illusion, and has one of the worst states of mind. Complete isolation, depression, loneliness. Yeah, right down the bottom, nihilism. But if you bring this way of being to them, they may have never, ever in their lives come across a human being who wants to show understanding, not force their beliefs down their throat. Ask them questions to surface their own logos, their own words, their own reasoning, without any hint of blame. Not a hint. Without any hint of revenge or punishment for being wrong. Sin. That fucking shit. Approach them as a noble, and divine, rational being. To address them fairly, with patience, reflection, step by step, through asking questions. Say, hey, by the way, pal, we're having a conversation, aren't we? For us to have a conversation, there has to be some kind of language or words. Oh, and by the way, we have to be different from each other. We're other from each other to have a conversation, right? So at least there's that, self and other, a common language. That way of being and that use of the dialectic to ask questions, to bring forth not your own conclusions or opinions, but a body of data that they can then reflect on and puzzle on with their Sherlock Holmes hats on as a fellow adventurer.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
On the same quest we are all on. What quest? The quest of self, to know itself as pure mind, to develop understanding, which can't happen here because that's an all-at-once experience, but understanding can be developed here in the physical world through time and space, to develop an understanding of the dialectic and understanding itself, to know yourself as pure being, and use both together to reflect on what must necessarily be the cause of both, cause of the intelligible, understandable structure that unfolds in creation and is the ladder we climb to go back, knows itself as pure Usia, the cause of that, the self, the one self, the good self, the good that we seek. That's the cause of all good things. Because that's another one and many issue. Hey, is beauty itself good? Absolutely. In fact, in philosophy, once we have an experience or an understanding of that, we use that as the model of beautiful things in creation. And in philosophical midwifery, once we uncover our origin scene, we address the image of beauty, the cosplay, the pretending to be the god priest or the priest king of the house. Because you know why? Because no one gives a shit about your dumb opinions except your kids. When they don't know any better and they're dependent on you. So everyone, doesn't matter if you're even the author of this book, it's part of the human game, will find themselves in a situation where we see our child in their high state and we play out our opinions as if they're knowing. So it's not about being right or being perfect. It's about developing a relationship of reflection built on the dialectic, a way of being where we can talk about everything and address it systematically. To develop that progression from opinions in the physical world through understanding, know yourself as pure being, and use both that understanding and that nous to wonder about the first and final cause, the self. So, here we are, bringing that understanding. Oh, it might not even be understanding, doesn't matter. As we saw in the Mino last reading, right opinion is a good guide. Even if you haven't been to LA yourself, if you happen to have the right opinion of how to get there, you can use that as your guide. So just this model is all right. To bring it with you to approach that nihilist as the self. The noble. See them as noble, the most noble, beyond even the divine. But also, they are divine. And also they are rational, and they have the capacity to share in reason and intelligence. Why? Why do that? Hey, I heard the saying, knowledge is power. So what you should just be using is just gain this knowledge or right opinion to have power over people, right? To subjugate them and manipulate them to extract profit. Isn't that what Elon Musk told me to do? Nope. Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is an apprehension of an ideal that you can use with understanding to benefit the subject. You use your knowledge of medicine not to profit, but to benefit your patient. So what? So we can bring that right opinion or understanding, whatever level of development you are at, to ask questions of that nihilist, of that person, or anyone, whatever level they're at, approaching them as noble, divine, and rational on the same level of development we're all on. And that might be the first ever encounter with such a person they've had in their entire lives. And just that encounter, irregardless of how well your questioning went or your dialectic went about whether or not just having a conversation shows the limit of their nihilism. Just that way of being can be enough to help somebody out of that where they're stuck. And there are various levels that applies to. And so we can conclude, if art is that which benefits, and this is the human game, not just the human game, any intelligent species, any intelligent being who has developed logos, language, and the ability to reflect on themselves, then we can ask the question, what is the actual thing that benefits? And what we're seeing is whether we are going through philomathesis, the climb out of scientific beliefs of the physical world, to realize there have to be axioms or principles that we presuppose or preconditions for physical scientific beliefs. Philomathesis is a movement through understanding. Hey, you have an experience of being, or you see the logical necessity of being. But there must be depth to it. There must be levels. Beauty, justice, what comes first? Wholeness. Can you hierarchically arrange all of the aspects of being? Intelligence as you recognize yourself. Vitality to turn around and know yourself. You recognize it as ultimate reality, so existence. These are all aspects you can intellectually or through understanding recognize. And go beyond. Because hey, the many to one. If these are all good, what's goodness itself? If there are many forms, what's the one? The movement from philosophy to philophrenesis. And understanding runs through all. So back to the question from Chatter. Hey, shouldn't we love everyone? Provided understanding. Yes, with understanding. Therefore, if there is a single art, again, the one and many problem, if there is a one single art that we are here to master as human beings that actually benefits all intelligent beings with the capacity to reflect upon themselves with language, whether they be 1 billion years in the future or 1 million light years away, or whatever dimension of reality you find yourself in this lifetime or beyond, a kind of education and way of being you can take with you. What name do we give to that single art we are here to master? Well, if understanding is that which unifies the whole thing, we can say, hey, philomathesis, love of learning, philosophia, love of wisdom, philophrenesis, the love of the state of being self, of recognizing self. How about love of understanding? Philodianoia. That's the art. That's what we're doing. And that's the most fun. And it's the noblest game. The only real game in town. If we don't play it, we're dead as a species. If we don't play it, we're stuck in our repeating cycles of suffering and ignorance. We are.
That's weird that you think that.
We are weird and
disgusting. I'm so disgusted.
You'll be so disgusted unless we pick up the art of philodianoia.
Well, you're doing your best. Okay, so sorry, Ben. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Okay. So that's a bit of a recap for new people in chat. And we're specifically applying it to understand the nature of our pathologos, to free ourselves from the most powerful and insidious force in the universe, to be free to do that at whatever level you're at. And as you climb that level of development, either through the cognitive functions or through the different dimensions of being, dimensions of reality, I should say, through epistemology if you fancy, ontology. As we go further and further, we're going to surface more and more of our blocks. The two go together. So we do philosophical midwifery and philosophy. By the way, you have a guide, a spiritual guide to help you along that quest. That's your dream master. So we also do dream analysis. And if you want to create, put it into your profession, make your profession about the self, make your profession about understanding problems, then we have a 4-part process that we can say, hey, philodianoia, over here. We can say, philodianoia. Dianoia is the Greek for understanding. Dianoia has within it philosophical midwifery, the most important. Philosophy, which has to come along with it, which is the Balboa translation. Balboa translation of Soc. Of course, there are other people that we can get this from, but this is kind of the best because Socrates was the man. We can say dream analysis is your guide for removing what's false, discovering what's true. Dream analysis does both, helps you in both. And finally, as you go, you can apply it to your work, to your profession, to your creations, to be like Socrates, to be like Pierre Grimes, to be like the Dream Master. That's called mythology. Oh, and by the way, putting it into a myth helps you remember stuff. That's also a mnemonic device. Mythology. So that's the 4 parts of the one art that we can conclude rationally and maturely we are here to learn. Our true destiny. Without doing it, we are stuck, enslaved in fate. So, neat introduction. What do you say, Mr. Seal? Mr. Seal says...
Hey, whoa. Who asked you? Okay, go ahead.
He says, hey, here he is. Look at him. He's a fun little seal. He's been listening the whole time. And do you think that was a good introduction? He says, yes. So, with that under our belts, some stakes for why we're going to keep reading, some context for what it is we're reading, some understanding of the structure, how we're going to read. We're going to look for puzzles and also look for the dialectical structure so we can turn our right opinions into understanding, and then we can test our understanding in direct experience to move from understanding to knowledge. So, neat introduction. And here is a little sloth monkey thing. See him? There is no context for him, but now there is context for our reading. So, let's jump in. Oh, and by the way, all that stuff is you are going to be at a level of development yourself in relation to all that stuff that I said. All that super awesome rad stuff. In other words, there'll be a part of you necessarily, because you're a human, that will not like to hear any of that shit. Of course. You're going to rebel against that, or feel like you want to attack me. It's not me, by the way. I'm just reviewing what we've read in the book. So don't attack me. It's Pierre Grimes. Attack him. He's the jerk you want. Because that's what the Pathologos specifically does. It rejects the logos. It tries to attack the speaker. You ever seen the Republicans talk, or the Petersons or the whatever talk of the world? They immediately reframe the conversation to be about how you are stupid and I hate you and we should send you to a concentration camp. Trump, same thing. That's the path of logos functioning, to reject logos and understanding of causes and principles. To find truth that's universal and incorporates everyone. You can't kick anyone out or put anyone in prison or genocide anybody if you're doing understanding. So why do we keep doing this shit now? Because we have a pathologos that specifically rejects understanding. So you will find that. Oh, I got something better to do. I can do this or that activity better than midwifery, better than philosophy, better than dream analysis. And the more you understand the necessity for this, the more that you'll have to fight against it. Make it about me personally. Make it about Pierre personally. Pierre didn't go to Oxford. Well, he actually did go to went to a prestigious university. He was a very smart guy. He's fucking amazing. He wasn't brave. Well, yeah, he was like one of the most decorated war heroes against the Nazis, so I don't know, you'll find a reason to hate him. Everyone does. Literally, everyone does. Like, I remember when I first met the guy, well, when I went over to California the first time to meet him, well, to study this stuff. Before I met the man in person, I met people who've been studying with him for sometimes like 50, 60 years. And the first thing I noticed, and I was fascinated by this, every single person said the same thing, but it was all different. They said this: "Oh, you're going to study with Pierre Grimes?" Yeah, of course. You come a long way, all the way from Australia. Yeah. Must be hard. Oh, yeah. You've been studying this on your own? Yeah, pretty much. That must have been hard. Tell me about it. Well, Pierre's really, really great. He's the best. He helped me with my problems. Like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. They all said the same thing. And then they all said this: but. Oh, so funny. He is the greatest man ever, but he does have this one problem. And it was all different. But for most of them, it was sufficient for them to give up their quest, to not show up at the meetings, to not do dream analysis, to not do midwifery. So we're not blaming you, but you have to recognize it. That's your job. Recognize what? Recognize you'll have this. And maybe you're at the level where you're here as well. So you'll have this as well as you're climbing through this. That's why we climb through this in philosophy and address this in midwifery. So what? So what I say, what we just said in that review, that synopsis or introduction. Fix my lighting so I don't look like Casper. That one's kind of no. Well, okay, that's I didn't really understand that, but I'm curious. I want to know more about it. That's here. That's a good state. Philosophical ignorance is a good state to be in. It means you don't know, you recognize you don't know, but you want to find out. And some spam, as always. Spam. Or you'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'm familiar enough with this channel, or I've done a bit of work in midwifery, done a bit of work in this or that. What he just shared was a bunch of right opinions to me. I don't know. I don't really understand it, but it makes sense. They were good pictures, and there was a fun little dance with his stuffies. So it makes sense, but I don't really understand how or why it has to be that way. Couldn't it be something else? Couldn't it be that there are many paths to enlightenment? Couldn't it be that it's whatever you want? Couldn't it be that there is no destiny and it's just whatever you want it to be? Couldn't it be that beauty is in the eye of the beholder? So you'll have some confusion, but it will sound like right opinions, which means you got to do the work of nailing them down, turning them into understanding. And why do I look so pasty? Fix my lighting, maybe. Who cares? Or maybe you're working your way through understanding. You see the significance of the dialectic. You're somewhat familiar with it. You've read some of the books with us in the channel or whatever. Or maybe you've had an experience before in your life. Maybe you've had a profound... Maybe that's what drew you to philosophy. Maybe that's what drew you to understanding the nature of being or spirituality or self-improvement. You've had a dream where you had this experience. You had a drug trip. You had a meditation experience. You had in childbirth you can have it. There are different ways in which you can have. Maybe it was just all at once. It was suddenly. Providence, we call that. There was nothing preceding it that caused it. It just happened. Noose. So that overview, we got to nail it down. We got to turn it into understanding. That's what we're doing. Don't just believe me. Don't just believe Pierre. Don't just believe the seal stuffy or the baby phoenix stuffy, even if they're wonderful dancers. Look at them dance. Look at them go. See? And they love each other. Look. Scandal. Don't just believe any of them. Nail it down for yourself. And verify your understanding in direct experience, either in being able to reach your most meaningful goals or to midwife others through that same process. So, with that in mind, let's jump in. Here's the book. I think today's the day I'm going to splash out and buy a chair. It's getting ridiculous. Oh, any questions? Feel free to shoot them in the chat. And we could even go through a dialectic too. We can, because there's a bit of a time lag talking with someone in chat, we can practice. I can ask you some questions as we go and read as you type. We're still figuring it out. The idea is to make this fun, because it is fun. And the more the merrier.
Freaks. Duopoggers. I'm too pure. What feminists want is to specifically ruin your life.
Is this chat full of dumb cunts? And I'm sad for you.
Okay, Smoggy. Let's jump in. So we started to review last time, but we went into that sort of stuff last time. Let's keep reading. The pathologos, chapter 4, stages of the dialectic. The pathologos has a structure, function, and goal that's the same in all pathologos problems. Because of this basic commonness, we often speak of morphology or form of such problems. Questions designed to surface the particulars of the pathologos problem will help us fill out the nature of the problem. By following a method that stresses the order of questions, the subject can anticipate the direction of the dialogue themselves and assist in the delivery of a problem. So there's the metaphor of giving birth, delivering a problem. And we talked about how the logos is the understandable structure of all systems that have parts that can be hierarchically arranged. Like, for instance, we can hierarchically arrange the classes of beliefs to understand them. So here we are hierarchically, or we are ordering the questions. So what do we need to do? We need to see the dialectical structure. If this is true understanding of how to solve problems, then it's going to follow the true method or the true structure of understanding itself. So to find that order, we have to look for the dialectical pattern or structure within the right opinions that we are collecting from the book. Make sense? Yes.
But this is probably the stupidest.
So you gotta help too. You gotta learn this stuff as well. Don't just say, hey, I got a problem. Midwife me and free me from my problems. Go. But you can do that. I've seen that happen a lot with Pierre Grimes as the midwife, the author of this book, of course. But yeah, it's best to help by learning it too. There are times when the midwife adapts the basic design of the questions to meet the particular needs of the subject. And it is at such times that the method itself becomes a map to chart the direction of the dialogue. Therefore, there is no need for the midwife to appear as the knower. So, fundamentally different from the pathologos. Our parental surrogates or our parents have to appear as a knower for us to accept the false teaching, unsuspected, without words, taking the blame, unjust cause of our problems. The opposite. We don't have to appear like a knower. As if they understand the meaning of everything the subject reveals, because the method itself arrives at a field of data from which the subject can puzzle out the meaning of the answers to his problem. It is in this sense that the midwife only assists another in the birth of an idea and doesn't offer answers or interpretations. So these questions are designed to help them come to the answers. You don't want to force your baby into their womb. That would be weird. That'd be a body horror film. It'd be really weird. But hey, that's mythology. Maybe one day, maybe one of our chatters is a movie dude or dudette and wants to do mythology or share their understanding of midwifery, but also show the dangers of doing midwifery poorly, and we'll make a movie of that. The midwife forcing their own child into the delivery somehow. Really weird stuff. Which is, that would be using your art for benefit, or stage 4 mythology. Like that, see? That's like a movie. Animation. Alright. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we don't have the corners cut off. There we go. And move it there. There we go. In following the procedure, the subject can be confident that the direction of the dialogue conforms to the art of midwifery. The dialectical method of midwifery presupposes the subject's willingness to participate in a joint venture of inquiry. It's a joint venture. You're not at odds. It's not a debate. Of inquiry into the nature, the necessity, so no blame, no shame, no guilt, no punishments. The nature, the necessity, and the interrelationships of the obstacles the subject encounters when pursuing their most meaningful goals. Thus, the subject comes to understand philosophical midwifery. Great. Each stage of the dialectic is indicated by a bracketed letter, and they'll be referred to as later sections of the book. So we want to nail down as best we can these letters, because we're going to use them later, which is why, even though it's a short chapter, I think this is our 3rd or 4th episode on it. This is the key one. This is the big papa. This is the big papa malapa, the big enchilada. Okay? A, or 1. I'm going to say the numbers because we're looking for the structure of the dialectic. The dialectic has 4 stages to review. Where's the dialectic? Probably written on the board a million times. Crack my back. Here we go. No. Yes. Find a better one. Here we go. Definition: the subject or self in relation to itself. Demonstration: how it functions to others, self to others. Division: how those others relate to other others. And conclusion: from those others, how does that other return back to itself? So, 3 primary ideas: self and other, the most primary terms that they can be, arranged completely as 4 stages. But we have, within each stage, when you're defining something, you can say what's true about it, what's false about it, and what's true and false. What's true about a bike? It has wheels. What's false about it? It has an engine. What's both true and false? It is autonomous. In one way it is, because it moves, but in one way it's not, because you move it. Now that's just loose and fast, but that's the idea. So we have 4 categories times 3 equals 12. So we're looking, and we have 12 stages in the art of midwifery. The most important thing that we are here to learn. So important that I bet there were people who were following along and then they've racked off to do something else, to watch a more entertaining YouTuber or a more beautiful streamer. I understand completely. But Sag, because this is so key. What are you going to do? I'll work on being more beautiful to get more Twitch followers. Although the people I follow on Twitch are beautiful because of the radiance of their rationality and their self. So I don't know, be more myself. I don't know. I'll figure it out. So, number 1, A. Individuals who enter into this dialectic begin the process of inquiry by stating why they believe they have been unable to reach their goals. And there's a little 1, which is a footnote. Let's scoot down to the footnote. When applying philosophical midwifery principles in psychotherapy sessions, GDRP-trained psychotherapists have often found it necessary to educate clients in stating their goals and problems. Right, so you might have to learn how to state what your problem is. Like, it might be difficult to do that, but the idea is, however you learn how to say it, like, the prereq for this process is, hey, you got a problem? Show me. And why do you think you have that problem? B, then they cite a present example of the difficulties that they experience when trying to reach their goal. So define your problem. Give a definition. A demonstration. How does it demonstrate itself? What are the difficulties you experience? How does it function, that problem? And then they give two or three more examples until the subject realizes there is something in common that runs through these examples. Sufficient time is allowed, so it's not a one-off thing, it's a relationship. It's the best kind of relationship, of course. Significant time is allowed for the key ideas to unfold and reflect on the broader context in which they occur. So we've got how it functions. Self itself. First, we got definition. Self itself. What's the problem? Self itself. How does it function? Give an example. Maybe give a couple. Because it's a certain class of problem we're after. A repeating problem. It's not a one-off thing. I forgot my keys once. Well, that's not what we're after. It has to be a problem that repeats itself. That you have been unable to solve. If you think you know the answers, you're not really doing midwifery. Why? Because that's not philosophical ignorance. That's you think you know it all. So, definition of your problem, self itself, subject itself, problem itself. How does it function? Self to others. Demonstration. Now, sufficient time is allowed for the key ideas to unfold in the broader context. Broader context meaning that functioning, how does it function in other contexts? Other to other or division. From the division, there needs to be something that sticks out as key or ideally causal or the whole. So something that incorporates all of those divisions in C, that's D. They are encouraged to explore any difficulty that turns them away from their goal. Making their failure inevitable. Oh, pardon me. Inevitable failure. Fate. The difficulty is often the effect of the presence of the things that have surfaced in division, the key ideas unfolding. For the functioning in B, division in C, what did you see? You've seen negative thoughts. Same negative thoughts, which is why we take notes. Go out and try and reach your most meaningful goal. Try and relate to the most beautiful person you've ever seen. Don't go less. Try and reach the most meaning. Try and do your most meaningful goal in the most excellent way. Don't set yourself short. Set yourself short. Cut yourself down. Don't go for less than excellence. Yeah, that works. Negative thoughts. And as you do that, write down the negative thoughts. Write it down. Audio record. Sometimes that's a good way of taking notes. If you're in the middle of a football game, call a timeout. Do you have timeout in football? Yeah, sure. Do a terrible foul so the ref calls timeout, and then get the water boy to run on with a pencil and pad. Hey, these are the negative thoughts that I'm having that's preventing me from playing football in excellence. These are the feelings. And these are the inappropriate actions. I went ahead and fouled someone when I could have just called a timeout. So these are the aspects or the key ideas that are unfolding in the division. You need to take those divisions and synthesize them. That's the last stage. Because, just a reminder, the last stage of the dialectic is conclusion, which has a synthesis that takes those many examples in division and sees if you can unify it into a single other, a single functioning. And then you take that synthesis, which gives you this other here, and you relate it back to the self, relate it back to the thing. In this case, relate it back to your problem, which is analysis. So synthesis and analysis is in the conclusion stage. That's how you conclude. All right? Neat. I'm having some protein in my protein drink. It's cookies and cream flavor. Tasty. So, what unifies negative thoughts, feelings, and inappropriate actions, as well as inevitable failures? After the subject are somewhat familiar with midwifery, they can be led to reflect on the differences between the statement they gave of their problem. See, this is the analysis. You're relating it back to the original definition. In philosophy, it's evolving. Every time you reread the symposium, or you have a greater definition of beauty itself. So in philosophy, we're applying it to what's true, the true definition of beauty itself, justice itself, or self, the one self. So every time you do it, you're going to learn. So dialectic, you just go up and up and up. I swear, I'm going to get a new chair. I'm going to splash out. Whereas here, you are applying it to what's false. So your definition that you started is going to be false. If you are familiar with midwifery, you can be led to reflect on the falseness in relation to what you just discovered. They're going to reflect on the differences between the statement they gave of their problem and the description of the difficulties that they've just done in B and C that turned them away from their goal, got them to give up, got them to set themselves short, whatever that saying is. After subjects understand their problems are intelligible, which is a level of development, it's an upgrade. It's a new level of ousia. As we go through those cognitive functions we talked about over here, you can say each level of development through these cognitive functions that we drew up, and I've lost again. Surely not. Here we go. Yeah, these things that we talked about. You are reflecting on yourself in a new way. Reflecting on yourself in a new way. You're reflecting on yourself in a new way. And nous can be defined as pure self-reflection, pure ousia. These are all different levels of ousia. Self-reflection. Knowing yourself. So the experience of nous or enlightenment is pure knowing of self. And of course, beyond even that is the one self. So one of the big questions in philosophy that we have discovered in the Meno, which you can check out, there's a link to the YouTube channel below and the playlist and stuff of the Meno, is, well, actually, if this is learnable, if you can be led through education, through this, to develop, to reflect on being with the dialectic such that you can re-experience this or remember that experience of pure ousia, because we necessarily had that experience before incarnating. Well, what about this one? That's beyond experience. If this is needed for true excellence in the Meno, true virtue, how the fuck do you get this if you can't experience it? And therefore it can't be an object of knowledge. How can you know the self if it can't be an object of knowledge? That's one of the puzzles that we are having in our reading of the Meno. So, levels of ousia. Why are we talking about that? Because here, the movement from C to D is a new stage. So the first three is the first stage of reflecting on a problem. If you've gotten to D, you can reflect on your problem and reflect on the differences between what you thought was the cause of your problem and what you've come to see in this reflection. Once you've been through this enough, you can awaken a new level of ousia. Wisdom of the serpents, know thyself. I want to be initiated into the ancient occult. You're in the right place. Only here, what we are understanding is you initiate yourself. So we're reading this to gain the right opinions of the stages of creating the conditions within yourself for that initiation experience, for that pure ousia, by seeing the stages of reflecting on your problems as you reach your most meaningful goal, which is a more and more heightened levels of ousia or self-reflection, which culminates into pure ousia. That's the initiation experience. And you're right. It used to be a cult. It used to be something that you didn't talk about publicly. Because your problems are problems because they block you from your spiritual or psychic development. That's why they're a problem. Meaning, if you talk about it, people's reaction is to fucking try and kill you. They killed Socrates. When I first started learning about this and I was sharing with everyone, because it's literally what everyone needs to learn, I got a lot of anger from everyone. It fucking sucked. But we don't have the time to keep it a cult. There's no time. Because we can play out the implications of our false beliefs about self with nuclear weapons and to the destruction of our species. So there's no time. We're just going to tell the truth. Which means I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to hide it in an occult way, and I'm not going to pussyfoot around the truth because hurting people's feelings, can't do that. No time. So you're in the right place. The Dawnbringers walk around with baskets full of serpents and abestrons. Anoint that thing and let's become Euperian. I do not know these fancy words you speak of. Ancient man. Yeah. The only serpent here is the metaphor of the serpent turning around and eating his own tail, which can be used to represent Usia sometimes. Not in philosophy, but some people use it that way. Yeah, it's purely rational. And recognizing that your problems or your false beliefs about self that block you from the discovery of the self or true initiation, recognizing that they are intelligible, you don't have to eat a snake or do a funny dance or pray to someone with the big hat or give them all your money. It's rational. That recognition of the rationality of your problems comes as stage 4 in the dialectic of midwifery. When you realize that your problems are intelligible, understandable, no need for faith or belief or getting bitten by snakes, you can appreciate the difference. Difference from what? Remember, the fourth stage of the dialectic. I'll write it underneath here so we don't get lost again. The dialectic is the structure of intelligibility. We have definition. Define your problem. Give a demonstration. That's part A. Demonstration. How does it function? So define your problem in relation to itself. The subject or the problem in relation to itself. Why do you think you have a problem? Now, how does that problem function? Subject to others. Self to others. And then division. And then we look at your problem in a broader context over time. You look at your problem again and again. You have more problems as you seek your most meaningful goals. You seek that initiation experience and are hopefully understanding along with it. That's others to other others. And then from that, you have the conclusion. You have to conclude. Conclusion, which is synthesis. Let's do that in a different color. Synthesis. So from those reflections of your problems in other contexts, can you find something that can unify all of them? The other to other, can you find a single other? That's synthesis. What unifies? What is a common theme that unifies your negative thoughts, feelings, negative feelings, inappropriate actions, and inevitable failures? And then once you have that, you have analysis. Analysis, which is the taking that synthesis back to the start. So here, you take whatever unifies your issue and you take it back to your original definition of your problem and you see how it's different. What you thought was your problem was wrong. You missed the mark. But you missed the mark in a way that was a reflection of the very problem that you are now understanding more. This is a new level of ousia. So here, this reflection, self-reflection, back to the start, is a new level of ousia. This marks your ability to move into the next ousia, the next stage of self-reflection, the next stage of going through the process of addressing your problems. They said one must drink from that half serpent. And I think it has something to do with what's in their body. Okay. Well, fortunately, we don't have to do that here. But it sounds, I don't know, fun, I guess, weird. Because this is completely yourself. This is midwifery. We don't give you babies to birth. We just ask you the questions. It's up to you to go through this process. So, new level. By the way, to begin this process of reflection, you have to be already at a new level of reflection. In other words, you have to be curious enough about yourself and your problems to even begin midwifery. That is itself a high level of ousia. So every stage of participation in the human quest, the most important game, our purpose as human beings, requires ousia at every level. That's what we're upgrading. And if you're a physical scientist and you think, there's only the material world and there is no self and I'm not going to think about myself, I'm going to spend my life manipulating physical people to get their physical wealth for profit, like a good finance bro, like most people are, then you're not in the fucking game. You can't get in the door. Right? And we can recognize that as that movement from, where is the thing we did last time? Here. The physical world that you see through your senses, the world of becoming, the world of opinions. Hopefully you've loved learning enough to realize, actually, learning is really about myself. I want to understand myself. So that's the most meaningful and profound thing that you can study or learn about, philomathesis, love of learning, in the physical world is yourself. Once you realize that, you've reached the apex of what you can learn about in the physical world. And the thing about the apex is it's the hyparxis. Hyparxis is a fancy word for the top of a level that's also got 1 foot at the next level. So the top of this level, self-reflection, is the first stage in the next level. You can't do philosophical midwifery, the very thing we are here to do, unless you are already reflecting on yourself. You have to be at the end of this. If you're wasting your time in the physical world, manipulating people for profit and all that fucking shit, you can't play the game. You're screwed. Hopefully you have people in your life, like people in the chat, who are amazing.
Is this chat full of dumb cunts?
No, opposite. They're amazing. And you've been a beneficial influence in a person's life and you've encouraged them, hey, maybe life isn't about accruing wealth. Maybe, have you ever wondered what you are? Ever wondered where you were before you were born? You ever wondered where you're going? You ever wondered if you have to answer those questions to know what you should be doing here? You ever wondered why you always have that same problem? Ever wondered why you get into the same kinds of relationships over and over again? These sorts of questions that you can have with your friends and be a positive influence in their life. What's being a positive influence? Encourage reflection on self and reflection on causes. So talk about that over coffee instead of who the next Tom Cruise movie, or gossip about who Gwyneth Paltrow is sleeping with. I don't know. Whatever the gossip is. Whatever the hot goss is. Or there are some very clever, wonderful people out there who use people's interest in opinions or gossip to encourage them to reflect on the causes of problems, or reflect on themselves, to reflect on the nature of mind itself or self itself. And they are the wonderful people in the world doing the best kind of work. They are
Disgusting. I'm so disgusted.
They're disgusting. No, they're not. They are.
I'm too pure.
They're pure. I promise I will upgrade my soundboard soon. I've been working on it. It was about drinking divine Hamer. Who is my savior? Whose body is divine, from whom I must consume? No, you don't have a savior in reality. Savior would be to depend on something else. If our problems are rational, then you solve problems simply by sharing yourself in reason, self-reflection. You don't need anyone else. So that might be confusing because I talk about political things. Like, wouldn't it be great if we were all rational? Wouldn't it be great if we shared in our education system how to solve problems? But we have to always keep in mind that secondary. You don't need anyone else to save you. You don't have to drink anything, or do a funny dance, or give all your money to the guy in the funny hat, or have sex with the priest, or any of that shit. Yeah, so wisdom is Sophia. That's right, philosophia. So after you do start to reflect on yourself in philosophy, philosophia, Sophia is the experience of pure Usia. So that's what we call nous. And some people can have stick their head above the water and have a look around, be a metaphysical tourist, as they say, with various drugs or chanting or dance or high displays of energy, or in dreams, in childbirth. There are various ways, breath work, all sorts of things. But that's not wisdom. That's an experience of nous that can awaken you to the fact that there is a realm that's non-physical and eternal. Near-death experiences, people have the similar thing. But that's not wisdom, unless you have understanding with you as well. And that's what we're learning here. Oh, and by the way, people have had various different enlightenment experiences, but that doesn't remove your problems. Famously. Can make you a bigger asshole, in fact, because now you got all this spiritual energy you can put into your problems. So we have archetypes in like anime and stuff, and mythology, of the pervy sage, or the Catholic scandal, or the whatever, the drunken master. People who have had experiences through this or that technique, who didn't get there through understanding, and didn't get there through also using that understanding to reflect on what's false, their problems, and so they still have their problems. Okay, so again, you're sharing beliefs about a savior, which means you've rejected what I've just said. Well, how about addressing what I've said? This isn't about beliefs. This is understanding. Don't have to believe anything. Because the thing about beliefs are, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And people are going to agree with you if they happen to have similar beliefs. And if they don't, they're just going to dismiss it. Who gives a fuck? That's the thing. Opinions that you gather from the physical world bind you to the physical world. So yeah, you could be a Catholic and say, the only way of getting salvation is to pray to Jeebus. Or you might be a Muslim, the only way of getting blah, 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 blah. But that's all fucked. Why? Because problems are rational. You just need to understand and apply yourself with integrity, which means having the integrity to leave your personal opinions and beliefs behind to develop understanding. And reality is rational, which is why understanding runs through all of it. Savior in a medical sense. Right, and I'm saying you don't need a savior. You just need to be curious about your problems. No, now, I'm saying that that's just my opinion to you, which means you're going to dismiss it because you don't already agree with it. But in this channel, what we're doing is trying to keep an open, curious, reflective mind to take your opinion, keep it. Don't throw your opinion away, but keep it as a question or a hypothesis, because you don't know this for certain. These are opinions that seem to make sense to you currently, which is why if you have a Christian belief, don't say, I am a Christian. I happen to have Christian beliefs now. Don't identify with your beliefs. Keep it. Keep it as a hypothesis. If this is the case, then this could be the conclusion. But also, follow along with where we're going. Keep this as a hypothesis too. That's being on the quest. So imagine you're a video game character. You've got an inventory. As you go, you are gathering questions. What? Gathering questions and gathering hypotheses. A state of mind of certainty. I know all the answers. It's fucking Jesus. And I'm going to kill all the goddamn Muslims who disagree with me. That's fucked. That's ignorance. That's a problem. That's certainty. Certainty like that is a marker of a problem. Loyalty to ignorance. What we want to do is take our opinions and stuff and turn them into a question. Could it be that the only way to salvation is believing in Jeebus? Or turn it into a hypothesis. If we are fundamentally lacking, like my priest told me, we are all sinners, we are less than God, then it would follow that my salvation has to come from someone outside of me, because I was born with original sin. But that's just a hypothesis. You see the difference? Someone who blindly obeys or believes it, they're never going to learn. I'm certain that I'm a sinner. And I have all this evidence. Look at all the problems I have. Look at my sexual deviant thoughts that I have. It must be that's a mark of a pathologos. A fundamental false belief that you're identified with about yourself and reality that makes you unable to relate to any different reason or evidence. What cults have. But in this game, we want to turn it into a question. Could it be? Do you see how it brings with it a different state of being? Yeah, see, right now you're still crapping on about this shit that I'm not interested in. Why? Why are you not able to relate to the evidence and reason of me saying, I don't give a fuck about opinions? Opinions are stupid. No one gives a fuck about your opinions. Not one person. Your kid will, so you'll force your stupid opinions onto your kid because no one gives a shit about your opinions except for your kid who has to deal with it because they're stuck there and they're dependent on you. That's the origin of human problems. I've said that, but you're still rabbiting on about it. Why? Why not be curious? Why not phrase it as a question? Hey, could it be that we're all sinners and Jeebus is the only way to heaven? Or whatever the fuck? Could it be? Make it a question. Now, once it's a question, then organize the information that you're getting within a rational structure so we can all give a shit about it. Opinions, no one gives a fuck. Understanding, we can learn from, because understanding is for everyone. Just like we can all understand how to fly a plane. We can all understand how to do medicine. That's why we have schools for pilots and for doctors. It's rational, it follows evidence, it follows a structure of thought that we can all follow and benefit from. Otherwise, you're just being a dick. Like a Mormon knocking on your door. I have these opinions about Jeebus. Fuck off. Get out of here. However, someone who has understanding about something, I'm going to pay you money to hear. Not your opinions, your understanding. See the difference? So don't throw your opinions away. Turn it into a question, because to carry a question is to be on a quest. But you have to address your questions with maturity and rationality, which means frame your answer as a hypothesis, because you don't fucking know. You don't know that shit. It's an if statement. If it's the case, X, Y, and Z, then this might follow. Like here, if it's the case that all human problems are rational, then it follows that this channel, that we can learn the art of understanding problems without having to join a cult or whatever the fuck. Just maturity, integrity, a desire to know the truth can allow us to awaken higher levels of consciousness, to know ourselves as reality, Sophia, wisdom, and then use that reflection through understanding and questions to reflect even on that experience of pure being or Sophia, to wonder about the cause of that, to go beyond even enlightenment experiences, to go beyond even the experience of eternity. That's an if statement. I don't know if that's true. You don't know if that's true, but we can both carry that together, which means we're together in a party on a quest. That makes sense? I hope that wasn't too blunt. Who's your favorite philosopher? Me. And anybody in chat. Jesus was blah blah, naughty, corrupting. Okay. Yeah, again. So you keep talking as if you know fucking shit. Who gives a fuck what you think? No one. I don't know you. Why should I give a shit what you think? Sounds selfish. Okay, that's a good word. Selfish. Now, do you see how the word implies that yourself and your self goals are bad? Selfish. What's the good thing? To be selfless. To be a slave. To give up your self goals, sacrifice yourself for king and country. Selfish and selfless are words of oppression. What we want to be is self-full. We want to know the self. We want to reach our self goals with our own understanding. People who use words like selfish want you to give up your self-thought, your self-mind, your self-logos. The very thing we are here as human beings to discover. Discover what? The self-logos, the rationality of the self. Self-being, knowing yourself as the divine, and the self that's beyond even that. So drop selfish and selfless. That's just hating on yourself. By the way, hating on yourself is a certain class of belief called pathologos. To think that the self is bad, inadequate, that sort of fucking shit. We all get it. It's not personal. It's not a blame game. What we are learning here is the art and method of reflecting on our false beliefs about self that undermine ourself, to free ourselves from it. Because hey, if you're seeking your own self goals, that's stupid. You're selfish. Be a slave to me, says mummy and daddy, says Trump, says Hitler, says any fascist. What we are doing is learning the process of how to remove that. Yeah, so we read, that's good. We read the Greek on this channel, by the way. We read the Logos and the dialectic of Socrates. We do that on this channel. We're reading the Meno at the moment. And we have the Greek. So a lot of the words that we use are Greek, like Sophia. Way too controversial persons. I don't know what that means. So the idea is, instead of, think of it this way. If I was your mate and I said, hey, can you help me move my sofa? And you were tired and you were hungry. Yeah. Well, then they're not controversial if you understand them. They're fascists. They're people who want you to abandon your goals to serve them. That's what it means to be fascist, tyrant. Now, we all have that sentiment within us because that's our origin scene of our problem. So if far right and fascist are not the same. Yeah, they are. It's the same. So there is no far right. It's the party of fascism. That's what it is. By definition. Conservative. No. You have to, if you're going to disagree with that, you have to provide the evidence and reason so we can follow your thinking. Otherwise, you're just saying, I love Hitler. What the fuck? Who cares? Fascist means to get people to sacrifice themselves to obey blindly your own personal goals at the expense of their benefit. So when Trump is stealing all the money, that doesn't benefit anyone except him. That's why he has to lie. When he sends people to concentration camps in El Salvador, when he sends the KKK ICE people to murder and rape and kill people and send them to concentration camps, that's fascism, that's tyranny. By definition, it's not an opinion, it's just what he's doing. Now, what we want to do is understand why, and understand why certain people defend him. Why did the Germans defend Hitler? Go to war for him? Why are there certain fascists that defend Trump? Can you tell me the name of the book Hitler made? Have you read it? No offense. No, so what we're doing on this channel is we're not interested in personal opinions of fascists. We want to understand the nature of beliefs themselves. The different classes of beliefs. What's the better kind of belief? And how do we... No, it's okay. How do we move through those beliefs? For example, today we talked about there are certain classes of beliefs people can have. There are 6 of them. And we read that in chapter 3 of this book. The best is an axiom that's self-evident. If A is equal to B and C is equal to B, then we can also say A is equal to C. Sorry, they're equal signs. Now you can't prove that. But it makes sense, doesn't it? If A is equal to B and C is equal to B, then A and C must be equal. You can't prove that. But it's kind of self-evident. We intuitively recognize it as true. That's a kind of belief called an axiom. It's axiomatic. Now, the second kind of belief, the second best, is scientific belief, which is backed by evidence and reason. Now, it might change with new evidence, or we might have better theories that explain with new evidence. The next kind is simple belief, sufficient. I believe my car needs petrol. I'm not a mechanic, but it's sufficient. Then we have the fourth kind, supernatural belief. You can't prove it. So you can't prove that Mary was a virgin, but Christians have to believe it. That's, by definition, absurd. You can't prove survival should be a general goal as opposed to extinction, however it seems self-evident. That's an interesting example of an axiom. I'll have to think about that one. That might be an axiom. That's an interesting example. Good for you. So you can't prove that Mary was a virgin, but you got to believe it anyway. That's absurd beliefs. Now, the fifth kind of belief is a prejudice, which is disproven by evidence and reason. There's evidence and reason to tell you that women are not less than men, that people with brown skin are not eating the dogs or whatever the fuck Trump's talking about. There's evidence and reason to say that you shouldn't murder people and send them to concentration camps. Hitler. And the worst kind of belief is a certain class of belief about self and reality and the divine that we think is self-evident, is disproven by evidence and reason, but we can't relate to the evidence and reason. So maybe you've got a friend who you talk to about, I don't know, whatever religion they're in, and you're following reason nicely, but there comes a point where they just become belligerent and they try and go off on a tangent or they attack you personally. That class of belief is the most powerful force in the world. It's a false view of yourself and reality that controls you. It's a psychic parasite. It gets you to undermine your goals. It will say, my goals are selfish. I need to sacrifice myself for Jeebus or for the priest or for my dad. It undermines yourself. It causes your self-sabotage. It prevents you from going for your highest goals and going for it with excellence. This is the kind of belief that we are addressing here because it's the cause of human problems. And you can't relate to it through evidence and reason. So what do we have to do? We have to look for evidence of this problem in our life, which means we have to shoot for our highest goals and we have to reflect on the problems that block us. That's the game. That's the quest. That's what every human being is here for. It's the noblest game, and it's really the only game in town. Because
You're a wizard, Harry.
Because you're a wizard, Harry. It's the archetype of all drama. Shooting for your highest goals, you'll face a block. You'll think, you'll have a thought or a feeling, or you'll do an inappropriate thing that will sabotage yourself, or get you to give up on your goal, or get you to undermine your goal, or do something else. That's what we're looking for. Because you take that evidence with you into a certain kind of reflection called philosophical midwifery. That's the art we're learning. And the philosophical midwife will ask you questions about your problem. So they're not giving you their opinions, they're not giving you their beliefs. They're not like the parent forcing their bullshit on the kid because no one's given a shit about my dumb beliefs, but I think being a wise guru, I think being a knower means having all the answers. That fucking shit. None of that. Just asking questions about your problem, letting your words come to the surface as you reflect on your problem, because the words that you put on the reflection of your problem surface the problem. Our problem is hidden in our words. That's why it's called pathologos. Logos means words. That's why it's dumb to just rock up to some place and say, here are my opinions that you should have. No. Your opinions are evidence of your problem. The opinions you identify with, you're attached to, is your problem. But I can ask you questions about the words you use that will allow you to see the problem that you didn't even know you had. That's philosophical midwifery. No playing a knower, nothing to do with opinions, just following the structure of understanding itself, the dialectic, using that as a map to ask you questions that you can use to reflect on yourself. Here's the rub. You can't force anyone to do that. Someone who thinks they've got it all figured out, they're fucked. Get out of here. Not interested. You have to say, this is a problem that I've had, and I can't find the answer. Whatever I'm carrying right now is insufficient for me to solve this problem. If you're not facing that kind of a problem, do better. Reach for a higher goal. Reach for further excellence. Go for something more beautiful, more profound, more meaningful. You need to surface a problem that you can't solve. And you need the courage, the integrity, the maturity, and hopefully the friends around you to take that evidence of that problem with you into a philosophical midwife discussion. Reflection. You're not going to get it all at once, but the more you reflect on yourself, that's called ousia, the capacity we have to reflect on ourselves. The more that you reflect on yourself with words, that's the logos. And the more that you reflect on yourself with words following a certain structure, called the dialectic, the more you will see that which you were blind to. And the hypotheses that you get from these conversations, not opinions, hypotheses, you have to test, meaning you have to go out in the world and try and reach that goal again. You'll either get it or you won't. If you won't, great. We got something to talk about in midwifery. If you do, great. Now, next goal, go higher. Keep going, keep going, keep going until you get all the way. Now, the thing is, if you do that, not only are you able to reach your most meaningful goals, but necessarily you've had to go through this reflection with logos, with the dialectic to get there. Meaning every step of the way, you're also gaining an understanding and mastery of an art. The human art, the art we're here to develop, the art of benefiting, not just humans, anything, all intelligent beings. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
So if someone said, hey, I've got this pill you can take, go all the way to the top, we would say, keep your pill. Don't want it. We want to develop ourselves step by step through understanding, reflection, logos, and dialectic, so that as we get to the top, we have what we need to turn around and help anyone else. Hey, and not just help anyone else, help ourselves. Because we might reach this stage of enlightenment and think, hey, that's it. But we have the capacity to reflect on even that experience of bliss or beauty or knowingness and wonder about it in a certain structured, reflective way to go beyond it. That's the point. Make sense? I hope it doesn't, because if it doesn't make sense, you can be curious, and that's the point. Get curious. Get questions. So you've got to start with curiosity. You've got to start with an open, curious mind. You can't begin the game with certainty. You can't. These are all my lovely opinions I've gathered from my parents and my culture and my religion. No, empty your cup. Get rid of that shit. No, don't do that. Reflect, curious, wondering. Just to get in the door. That's called hyparxis. Hyparxis because it's the top of one level and it's the beginning of the next. So, realizing that the world isn't about dumb opinions or stupid beliefs, even if you got it from your lovely daddy and your beautiful mummy. It's about realizing that true learning, love of learning is philomathesis, the first stage. Socrates outlines in the Phaedo. Realizing the most important thing you can reflect on is yourself and your problems that yourself is reaching as not selfish, self-full. Reflecting on yourself as you approach your self goals in your most self way with your self logos. That reflection is the best thing you can do in the physical world. Once you realize that, you're at the top of the physical world. But you're also at the bottom of the metaphysical world. You're just beginning your philosophical growth. And that's what you take with you to this game. So, hey, I have realized that I need to seek my highest self goals. And as I go, I need to ousia, reflect on myself and my problems. That's the first thing you say to your midwife. If you're not saying that, get out. Get out. Get out. Not get out. That sounds mean. Go back out there into the world and keep learning. Seek your higher goals. I don't need to. If I pretend to be the knower, people think I'm a pastor. People think I'm close to God. And people give me money. And people will have sex with me. And I can be a well-respected priest in my community. Do better. Okay, physical shit. Great, good for you. You can manipulate people to get praise and money and stuff. Who cares? Do better. Incorporate the self. Can you see the self in your scriptures? Can you see the self logos in your scriptures? Can you see a method for understanding human problems in your scriptures? You can't? Well, then make new scriptures. But that's uncomfortable. I know how to relate to people when I pretend to be a knower. I just copy my daddy. I just copy my pastor. That's right, comfortable. That's a loser philosophy for losers. Comfortability, imitation. Do betterer. Try it. If you do, you will find as you go towards a more meaningful goal than what's comfortable, you will face blocks. We're in. We're in like Flynn. You're in there. You're doing good. Now, try it again. Try it again. Try and overcome that block. Apply that high state of excellence to every other goal. Your relationships. Make your relationships about the self, about understanding problems. Hopefully, you will fail several times. Hopefully, you'll fail enough that you'll realize you have a repeating problem that repeats as a cycle in the same kind of a way over and over. You'll come to your midwife and say, hey, you know what? I found a problem. I think it's about this. I think I can figure it out. Go figure it out then. You have to try and figure it out yourself until you realize you can't. It's a kind of problem that you can't solve. You don't have what you need in your current way of being to solve that problem. That's what we're after. And that's what you bring just to the beginning. You have to be a certain level of ousia, a certain level of excellence, a certain level of integrity just to get in the door. That's the beginning. Now, from the beginning, we're going to go through the next stages you're going to go through. But first, I'm going to take a quick, and we're back. So, get in the door, certain level of ousia. First stage, A, give a definition of your problem. The fuck? What was that? It's weird. Fuck. What's going on with my computer? Oh, I think maybe that's Providence telling me that it's time to end the stream. It is about 3 hours in. I don't want to get these too long because I'm posting them on YouTube. But good talk, good reflection, good questions. This is probably the best way of going, rather than going through all 12 stages at once. Maybe going through them in chunks of 3 and 4 is the best way of going. So I'm going to pay attention to the logos. Remember, the logos has its own demands. To just point out the fact that we've nailed down at least the first 3. Let's finish the 4th one. Let's do them in 4s. Okay. Okay, let's do them in 3s. All right, that's enough. We'll finish the conclusion next time. A certain level of self-reflection, different from certainty, different from opinions, different from just making factual statements as if you know. That's called ignorance. We want philosophical ignorance where we're curious about our problems. We're not undermining ourselves with selfish. We're recognizing the self is the highest goal. And the most important thing we can learn about is the self. That's step 1. That's the ticket to the club. And my whole computer's spazzing out, so let's finish this quickly. Oh, dear Lord. Why is it doing that? Okay, maybe if I... Hopefully that will fix it. Oh my goodness. Let me bring this back. Hopefully that fixed it. Alright, so, ousia, self-reflection, seek your most meaningful goals, reflect on yourself as you go, identify a problem as you reach excellence, but not just one, You need, first of all, a problem. That's definition. Hey, midwife, I've got a problem. And they will say, oh. They won't say, I know the answer to all your problems. I'm wise and knowing. What you need to do is take some advice. Never, 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 never. Not about opinions, not about giving you words, asking you questions to surface your own words, your self-logos. Give a definition of your problem. What do you think your problem is? It's because I suck. It's because I'm being selfish. All right, that's what you think it is? Great. I'm going to write it on the board. Write it on the board. Now, give a demonstration of your problem. When did you notice it? Oh, I was doing this thing and then I had this problem and I wasn't able to reach my meaningful goal with excellence. Neat. But that's not really a problem unless we can identify it as a repeating cycle. So can you give a couple of demonstrations in your present, recent ones? Give 2 or 3. That's the second stage, stage B, demonstration. Now, let's reflect on that over a period of time. Many conversations. Maybe in the same day if you're really having fun. Hey, maybe you've got a really good partner in your life or friend in your life or friend on a good Discord channel like this one, and you can talk about it for a long time. And you will surface you will look at other instances of your problem. Hey, you've given 3 here. How does it play out in your relationships? How does it play out in your work? How does it play out more and more and more? And you'll start to notice others. You'll start to notice certain negative thoughts, negative feelings, inappropriate actions, inevitable failures. And then from that, we need to find a way that something that unifies it all. That's the next stage, synthesis. And then we take that new level of seeing of your problem back to your original definition and see how your original definition was not only wrong, but it was wrong in a way that reflected your problem. Oh, really? Your problem was you thought you were selfish? Is that an undermining of yourself? Every time you think you're selfish, do you beat yourself up? Do you feel bad? Do you act inappropriately, sacrifice your self-goals to be a slave to someone else? A new level of reflection. You see that not only, you see that the way that you understand your problems was wrong. It's a new level of ousia, a new level of maturity, a new level of waking up. So, where's the synthesis in D? Let's find that before we end the stream. They're encouraged to explore any difficulty that turns them away from their goal, making their failure inevitable. The difficulty is often the effect of the presence of negative thoughts, feelings, inappropriate actions, and inevitable failures. The subjects, after you do this for a while and you become familiar with midwifery, you can be led to reflect on the differences, between the statement you gave of your problem. Was it because you're selfish or because of these thoughts, feelings, actions? The difference between the statement they gave of the problem and the description of the difficulties that turn them away from their goal. The subjects understand the problems are understandable. You have awoken to a new realization of the rationality of human problems and the intelligibility of reality itself. Reality is understandable and knowable. Now, that's just an opinion until you see it through this process. That's the game. That's the point. Problems are rational. You don't have to dance with snakes in the moonlight or anything like that. Or give all your money to the priest or any of that shit. After you come to understand that problems are intelligible, which means understandable and knowable, they can appreciate the difference as a manifestation of problems. Difference between what you thought and what you're describing. However, introducing this comparison before that level of sophistication has been reached only causes undue confusion and perplexity to the subject. So, a lot of what I'm saying is going to be confusing and perplexing to you, but that's normal. The more you get familiar with midwifery, the more that you talk about it and use it and tune into the stream, the more you will gain seeing and understanding, and the more it will make sense. But we haven't seen the unification. Supposedly, this is the hyparxis, which means the final stage of the first dialectic and the first stage of the next. So, formally, it should be the conclusion of this dialectic, but also the new definition, other back to self. You have a new definition, which means D, which is number 4, should be the end of this 4, but also the start of the next 3. The start of definition, demonstration, division, the next 4. But our author hasn't given us that which unifies our negative thoughts, feelings, and inappropriate actions. Hasn't given us the synthesis. So what is it? What's the real cause of our problem? It isn't what we thought it was. So what's really causing the most important question, the most important problems that we are facing? What's really causing our problems? Tune in next time to find out, as we continue to read and continue to become curious, continue to develop hypotheses, continue to share them with our chatters and our friends. Join the Discord. Feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're in the Discord, you'll get notification when we go live. And we're going to come back wondering, what is it that's really causing our problems? Stay puzzled, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.